A hot cup of coffee rests in your hands as you stand at SpaceX's Starbase in South Texas, watching Starship prepare for another test flight. Right in front of you stands the largest and most powerful rocket ever built. This is where Elon Musk turned one of humanity's wildest dreams into reality. Towering launch pads, massive fuel tanks, cutting-edge technology. Every countdown brings us one step closer to becoming a multi-planetary species. Standing here, it feels like humanity can accomplish anything. You've always been drawn to the unknown. You've stood on snow-covered mountain peaks where the air felt impossibly thin. You've wandered through the dense rainforests of the Amazon, where sunlight barely reaches the forest floor. You've crossed the scorching dunes of the Sahara beneath an unforgiving sun. And somewhere along the way, you began to believe humanity had explored just about everything this planet has to offer. But then, you glance through the thin wisps of steam rising from your coffee. Your eyes drift toward the vast expanse of open water beyond the city. And suddenly, a thought crosses your mind, a realization that's as unsettling as it is absurd. Every place you've ever visited, every destination you've dreamed of, every location you've ever pinned on a map, all of it exists on just a tiny fraction of Earth's living space. Everything we proudly call our world occupies only a sliver of this planet. The overwhelming majority of Earth's habitable environment lies somewhere beneath those dark waters, hidden, silent, and almost completely beyond our reach. Now ask yourself something. Miles below the surface, in a world where sunlight has never existed, how many creatures are still living their lives completely unnoticed? How many forms of life have never been seen by human eyes? What exactly are we sharing this planet with? Down there in the darkness. So go ahead, set your coffee aside, because from this moment on, we're leaving the familiar world behind. Together, we're about to descend into the deepest, the coldest, and perhaps the most alien place on Earth, the ocean below. Every time you watch a nature documentary, it's easy to believe we've already uncovered the ocean's greatest secrets. Science has identified roughly 240,000 known marine species, from the largest blue whales to vibrant coral reefs teeming with life. It sounds impressive, it feels complete, but that confidence couldn't be further from the truth. Because that number tells only a tiny part of the story. According to estimates from marine researchers, the species we've officially documented represent only about 9% of the life believed to exist beneath the waves. Think about that for a moment. Everything we've named, everything we've photographed, everything displayed in museums and textbooks is only a small glimpse of a world we've barely begun to understand. Which means there could be well over 2 million marine species that humanity has never seen. Not once, no photographs, no scientific records, no specimens preserved in laboratories. What do they look like? How many eyes do they have? How do their bodies survive pressures that would crush almost anything on the surface? The truth is, we simply don't know. And here's the astonishing part. Whenever scientists send deep-sea submersibles or research expeditions thousands of meters below the surface, they fully expect to discover something completely new, not occasionally, not once in a while. Almost every expedition into the deep reveals species no human has ever documented before. In the deep ocean, the unknown isn't the exception, it's the rule. That became strikingly clear in early 2024. While exploring the remote Nazca Ridge off the coast of Chile, an international team of scientists uncovered an extraordinary surprise. In a single expedition, they documented more than 100 previously unknown marine species, all from one isolated underwater mountain range. One expedition, one location, more than 100 discoveries. Now imagine scaling that up. The Nazca Ridge is only a tiny piece of something vastly larger. Beneath the world's oceans lies the mid-ocean ridge, a continuous chain of underwater mountains stretching nearly 40,000 miles around the globe. It's the longest mountain range on Earth, yet much of it has never been explored. If one relatively small section could reveal over 100 new species, how many more are still waiting in the darkness? Thousands? Millions? No one can honestly answer that question. And here's something even more mind-bending. That estimate of 2 million undiscovered species refers only to organisms large enough for us to see. Look closer, far closer. Peer through the lens of an electron microscope into the microscopic life of the deep ocean, and the numbers explode beyond comprehension. We're no longer talking about millions. We're talking about billions of distinct microbial life forms. The deep ocean isn't an empty abyss. It's an unimaginably dense living system, a hidden biosphere where life has evolved under crushing pressure, perpetual darkness, freezing temperatures, and conditions unlike anything found on land. A world that doesn't follow the rules we're familiar with. A world that has been writing its own evolutionary story for hundreds of millions of years. At this point, you might be wondering, if there are so many creatures down there, why don't we ever see them? Why don't they simply swim toward the surface? The answer is surprisingly simple. Because we don't just live in different places, we live under completely different laws of physics. Between their world and ours stands one of nature's most unforgiving barriers. Descend to the Hadal Zone, nearly 20,000 feet below the surface, and the pressure becomes almost impossible to comprehend. It reaches around 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure we experience at sea level. Imagine balancing the weight of a military tank on the tip of your thumb. That's the kind of force pressing against every square inch of a creature's body, every second, every day, for its entire life. Over millions of years, these animals evolved to survive that unimaginable pressure. Their bodies are built differently. Their cells, tissues, and chemistry all depend on it. Bring one of those creatures rapidly to the surface, and the sudden loss of pressure can destroy its body in moments. What kept it alive in the abyss becomes the very thing that tears it apart. Pressure isn't the only problem. Temperature is just as deadly. The deep ocean remains astonishingly cold, usually hovering between 34 and 36 degrees Fahrenheit. Raise those same animals into surface waters warmed by the sun, and the environment they've adapted to for millions of years disappears almost instantly. For many deep-sea species, the journey upward isn't an escape. It's a death sentence. And then there's the darkness. At around 650 feet, sunlight begins to fade rapidly. Go deeper, and eventually, every trace of daylight disappears. No sunrise, no sunset, no moonlight, no stars, only an endless night that has remained unchanged for millions of years. Even the most advanced research submarines struggle against it. Equipped with powerful floodlights and cutting-edge cameras, they can illuminate only a tiny pocket of water ahead. Perhaps 30 feet, if conditions are ideal. Beyond that, nothing, just an endless wall of black. Imagine walking alone through the Amazon rainforest on a moonless night. Your flashlight reaches only a few yards into the trees. You know the forest stretches for miles in every direction. You know countless animals are hidden in the darkness. But all you can actually see is the narrow beam directly in front of you. That's what exploring the deep ocean is like. There's another problem we rarely think about. Submersibles aren't quiet. Their motors vibrate. Their electronics generate electromagnetic fields. Their lights blaze through the darkness like searchlights. To us, they're remarkable engineering. To deep-sea animals, they're impossible to ignore. Many species can detect vibrations and electrical signals from astonishing distances, long before a human ever sees them. So by the time a camera finally reaches the sea floor, the most cautious animals are already gone. They've slipped back into the darkness, out of sight. What we're left observing are often the creatures that were too slow, too curious, or simply too weak to escape. Which raises an unsettling question. How much of the deep ocean have we actually seen, and how much has been deliberately avoiding us all along? Maybe we've been thinking about this the wrong way. Perhaps we aren't the explorers down there. Perhaps we're the ones being watched. Imagine drifting through an endless black ocean inside a noisy metal machine. Its lights cutting through the darkness like a beacon. You can't see beyond that narrow cone of light. But beyond it, thousands of unseen eyes may already be watching your every move, waiting, without you ever knowing they were there. Have you ever heard of megalophobia? It's the fear of enormous things, towering skyscrapers, massive ships, creatures far larger than they should be. If that idea makes you uneasy, the deep ocean is about to become your worst nightmare. Because hidden in its darkest depths is one of biology's strangest mysteries: deep-sea gigantism. On land, the rules seem straightforward. When food is scarce and temperatures are brutally cold, animals usually become smaller. Smaller bodies require less energy. Less energy means a better chance of survival. It's a pattern found across much of the natural world. But deep beneath the ocean, that rule begins to fall apart. Instead of shrinking, some creatures become unimaginably large. Sea bugs grow to the size of basketballs. Sea spiders stretch their legs more than a foot across as they slowly crawl over the sea floor. And squid becomes something else entirely, something that feels less like biology and more like mythology. For centuries, sailors told stories about a monster they called the Kraken, a colossal beast capable of dragging entire ships beneath the waves. Most people dismissed those tales as nothing more than maritime folklore. But today we know that giant squid are real. Some grow well over 40 feet long, with eyes the size of dinner plates and tentacles thicker than a human leg. Sometimes, legends begin with something real. But here's where the story takes an unsettling turn. The largest giant squid we've ever documented may not represent the upper limit of what's possible. It may simply be the largest one we've happened to find. One of the strongest clues comes from an animal that regularly hunts in the deep: the sperm whale. Sperm whales routinely dive thousands of feet below the surface in search of squid. When they return, scientists often find their skin covered in fresh, circular scars. Perfect rings left behind by powerful suction cups. Some of those scars are astonishingly large, far larger than the tentacles of most known squid can explain. By measuring the diameter of those marks, researchers have tried to estimate the size of the animals that made them. Some estimates suggest encounters with squid measuring well over 30 feet in length, perhaps even larger. The truth is, no one knows for certain, because no human has ever observed these battles in the darkness where they take place. Every so often, the ocean offers another mystery. Massive, shapeless masses of decaying flesh wash ashore. Scientists call them globsters. At first glance, they look like monsters from another world. Most eventually prove to be the remains of whales, sharks, or other large marine animals after decomposition has altered their appearance. But for a brief moment, before the testing begins, they remind us just how little we truly recognize when the ocean gives something back. Now imagine this. If predators capable of battling sperm whales exist several thousand feet below the surface, what might be living even deeper? What survives in places like the Mariana Trench, nearly 36,000 feet beneath the waves? Where the pressure is so immense, it would crush almost anything built by human hands. The deeper we look, the less certain our answers become. And then there's one final mystery. In 1997, underwater listening stations operated by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, recorded an extraordinarily powerful sound deep in the Pacific Ocean. It became known simply as the Bloop. The signal was so intense that it was detected by sensors nearly 3,000 miles apart. For years, no one knew what had produced it. Some wondered if it came from an unknown animal of unimaginable size. Others believed it had to be something geological. Today, the leading explanation points to massive ice quakes, fracturing Antarctic icebergs, generating low-frequency sound. But for a time, the world's oceans reminded us of something unsettling. Sometimes they speak, long before we understand what they're trying to say. But let's set the giants aside for a moment, because size isn't the most extraordinary thing about the deep ocean. The real mystery lies in something far more fundamental: life itself. From the moment we're children, we're taught that nearly all life on Earth depends on one thing: the sun. Its light fuels plants. Plants support animals. And every ecosystem on the planet traces its energy back to that single source. Or so we thought. More than 10,000 feet beneath the surface, where sunlight has never reached, the seafloor suddenly cracks open. Towering chimneys rise from the darkness, spewing mineral-rich water heated to nearly 750 degrees Fahrenheit. These are hydrothermal vents. The water pouring from them is laced with toxic chemicals that would be lethal to most forms of life on the surface. By every measure, this place should be completely lifeless. Instead, it's overflowing with life. Dense colonies of giant tube worms sway in the darkness like ghostly forests. Pale crabs crawl across the rocks. Shrimp gather in swarms around water hot enough to melt lead. Every inch of the seafloor is alive, not despite these hellish conditions, but because of them. It's one of the richest ecosystems on Earth, existing in a place where, by all conventional logic, nothing should survive. The secret lies in a process almost no one learns about in school. These ecosystems don't rely on sunlight, they rely on chemosynthesis. Instead of turning sunlight into energy, specialized bacteria convert chemicals like hydrogen sulfide into food. Those bacteria become the foundation of an entire food web, a completely different blueprint for life, one that evolved without ever seeing the sun. Think about what that really means. If Earth were somehow thrown into deep space, if every forest froze, if every field withered, if life on the surface disappeared beneath an endless winter, these ecosystems might continue almost unchanged, hidden in the darkness, powered not by sunlight, but by the planet itself. It's a humbling reminder that life is far more adaptable than we ever imagined. And the deep ocean holds other biological surprises. Take the tiny jellyfish Turritopsis dohrnii. Under certain conditions, instead of dying after reaching adulthood, it can reverse its own life cycle. Its mature cells transform back into an earlier developmental stage, allowing it to begin life all over again. It's one of the closest things nature has ever produced to biological rejuvenation. Of course, that doesn't make it truly immortal. Disease, predators, or environmental changes can still end its life. But its remarkable ability forces us to rethink what aging really is. If evolution can produce something this extraordinary in a creature we've already discovered, what other biological abilities might still be hiding in the 90% of marine life we've yet to find? Abilities we've never imagined, simply because we've never encountered them. Vision itself becomes something entirely different in the deep sea. Many animals no longer depend on sight the way we do. Instead, they navigate through exquisitely sensitive senses that detect pressure, vibrations, faint electrical signals, or subtle chemical traces drifting through the water. And then there's light, not sunlight, but light created by life itself. Across the darkness, countless organisms produce their own eerie blue-green glow. The deep ocean isn't truly black. It's filled with living lights, like a silent sky of drifting stars. Now imagine seeing one of those lights in the darkness, a tiny blue glow, floating alone. Curiosity draws you closer. It seems harmless, almost beautiful. But just as you reach it, the darkness suddenly opens. Rows of needle-like teeth snap shut around the unsuspecting prey. That glowing light was never a beacon. It was bait in the deep ocean. Even beauty can be a weapon. By now you've seen just how strange the deep ocean really is. A world filled with creatures we've never met, ecosystems that thrive without sunlight, and mysteries that continue to defy explanation. But now, let's look at this story from a different perspective. Forget for a moment that you're human. Forget that you're the explorer. Instead, imagine you're one of the creatures living in the darkness below. For millions of years, your world has remained almost unchanged. No cities, no engines, no artificial light, only silence, only darkness. Generation after generation, life has followed the same ancient rhythm. To you, this isn't an alien world, it's home. Then one day, something appears from above. Not a predator you've evolved to fear, not a rival competing for food, something completely unfamiliar. Blinding lights pierce the darkness. The water begins to vibrate. Towering machines descend from a world you've never seen. Cold, loud, unstoppable. If you had no idea what humans were, what else would you call them, except monsters? Those machines scrape across the seafloor with overwhelming force. Ancient coral gardens, some of them centuries, even thousands of years old, are crushed in minutes. Entire habitats disappear beneath heavy trawling equipment. Creatures that science has never even identified are swept away before we ever knew they existed. Some species may vanish before humanity even learns their names. And the destruction doesn't stop there. Plastic waste, industrial chemicals, heavy metals, even microscopic particles of pollution eventually sink into the deepest parts of the ocean. Today, researchers have found microplastics inside animals living in some of the deepest ocean trenches on Earth. There is almost nowhere left, untouched by us. So let me ask you one final question. What is the true monster of the deep? Is it the shark lurking in the darkness, the giant squid wrapped in centuries of legend, or the unseen creature hiding thousands of feet below the surface? Or is it the species that arrived from above, dragging steel across the seafloor, filling the ocean with plastic, and changing an ancient world faster than it can recover? Perhaps the scariest creature in the ocean never evolved there at all. So before you finish that cup of coffee, take one last look at the horizon. Beneath those calm blue waters lies the largest habitat on Earth. A world we've barely explored. A world that continues to surprise us, to humble us, and to remind us how little we truly know. Because sometimes the greatest mystery isn't what might be hiding in the darkness. It's realizing how small our place is within it. Thanks for joining me on this journey. And until next time, stay curious,